Hello and welcome to this episode of the DigiPod. My name is Farieha Aziz. Today I am joined by Danielle Sharaf. She is a founder and CEO of Switch. Danielle, thanks for joining us on DawnNews English. We will be speaking about the AI ecosystem in Pakistan, the AI policy, and also how future ready are we. Danielle, to begin with, what is the AI ecosystem in Pakistan like at the moment?
Thank you for having me, Farieha. It's a complete pleasure. So Pakistan's AI ecosystem right now, I wouldn't call it that we are head speeding anywhere. I would rather call it we're very AI curious and we are getting AI ready, right? So there's one aspect is the government, what the government is doing in terms of laying the policy framework and the regulatory framework and all, which I think the policy just came out and we'll get to speak about it later. But and then you have the private sector and the freelancer community. What is it that they're doing, right? So just to give you a quick snapshot, our tech ecosystem, we're about like I think we did about 3.8 billion, if I'm not wrong, dollars in IT exports last year, and that has actually grown this year in 2025, abhi tak, which is fantastic. And this is an ecosystem that is working and is profitable despite the regulatory environment in the country or the economic realities of the country, right? In terms of the AI ecosystem in particular, what's happening? The players that are leading the ecosystem right now are companies that they're big techs in Pakistan, like Arbisoft, like Systems Limited, that are multi-million-dollar companies, but they're primarily building AI solutions for the Western market, right? So they're very service-oriented. They're service-oriented companies that are working on LLMs, which are large language models, or agentic AI, but primarily as client services, right? In Pakistan, if we look at the startups that are working in AI for local solutions, you have smaller players who have not been able to raise much money. I think as far as if we look at the deal flow, this year we've only had about 2 AI startups that got funding. And the work that's primarily happening in Pakistan is around agentic AI, which means agentic AI, and then the second one is NLP, which is natural language processing. So you have 2 very good startups that have now come into Pakistan, as in they are based out of universities. One of them is based out of Lums. It's called Awaz Sehat, and they are working on training Urdu language bots for maternal and childcare health. So that is one. The other one is Xylexia, that's also building. It's an image scanning and it's an image analytical software AI that primarily deals with your radiological content, like your X-rays and stuff, to detect anomalies like cancer, tuberculosis, and all. So these are 2 health tech startups that have come up. So that's pretty much like a quick snapshot of what's happening in the ecosystem with AI at the moment.
And recently, you wrote, because you serve on different boards as well, and you review sort of startup pitches. What is it that currently there's, like you said, AI curiosity, but what kind of pitches are being received, and what do you think needs to be tailored for a local? Because you're saying that a lot of it is, things that have been outsourced for Western markets, but in terms of local idea development or to serve local communities or the market or to create that scope for it, how do you think AI needs to be harnessed?
Farieha, that's a very interesting question because a lot of the work that's happening in the country right now is existing in silos, right? AI is one technology that cannot exist in silos, right? It is not like your social media. It is not like your CRM building or SaaS services. Systems need to talk to each other, right? And we do not have right now in Pakistan any clean data pipelines or interoperability, right? So a lot of the pitches that we're seeing at the moment are of startups that have that are using APIs, what we call, right? So for instance, they'll be using ChatGPT APIs to build agents on top of it, or they'll be using Meta Llama's APIs to build agentic AI on top of it, which is fine. But also we have to remember that these are models that were essentially 90% of these models are being trained on English language, right? So they're not very inclusive. when it comes to Pakistan, right? Especially when you're looking at the sharing health data, or if you're looking to share banking or financial data. Like one of the bigger use cases in Pakistan that I see for AI is in the insurance industry, or giving loans and stuff. But if you are bringing agents from abroad and training them on English data, right, it's not going to be very representative. So yeah, so my beef currently, and I completely understand. Look, I've done startups, and I completely understand the limitations here. But a lot of the startups that are now coming out of Pakistan, a lot of the founders think that AI, because AI is a new buzzword, they will be able to attract investment just by using that as buzzword as it is, right? Rather than focusing on actual impact, right, that they're creating. So I think it's a word of caution for all founders out there, that until and unless you have an actual AI solution that's integrated into your startup, please don't sell it as an AI solution or as an AI startup to founders. So yeah, so that's what we're seeing.
And in terms of when you brought up the insurance and healthcare sector, and of course, like AI has become the buzzword today. But in terms of generally what AI would be most useful for, especially at a local level, whether it's, and also the data sets, right? In terms of, so again, it is language and there's data sets, and these are the two things that we talk about in terms of where bias comes in as well, and these are sort of regional global conversations. Is that also being considered here when there are pitches being made or local product development happening? And are there sectors that you see as AI ready, or that can serve local needs and a market?
Right. So sectors that are AI ready, absolutely. Right. One of the sectors, like I mentioned, banking is one sector. Right. InsurTech is one sector. There is big potential. Our banks have all the data. Our insurance companies have all the data. Automating that data, building like intelligent models on it that can, predict credit scores, that can also, that are more friendly to a small farmer sitting in Tata, right? And not only including like the urban class, right? That is an industry that is ready for AI in Pakistan. The second industry that's ready is education. Then there is health tech. Health tech, the biggest problem, even though I would say they are like partially ready, because all hospitals maintain their data. It's just that they do not talk to each other. So this is where interoperability comes in, right? So CMH would not be talking to Shaukat Khanum, like in terms of sharing data. The government hospitals exist in their own universe, right? If we can build these clean data pipelines and create interoperability, and that cannot happen in the private sector alone. Like the government has to be part of it. So one of the things that in this AI policy that I felt was lacking was the emphasis on creating these data pipelines, right? Clean data pipelines that industries can build on, that our startups can build on, right? Another industry is agriculture. Agriculture, there's huge potential, right from flood predictions, for instance, right, or connecting your local farmer to loans, or crop management. So these are areas where AI can play a huge role, and these are not areas potentially where jobs will be taken away, right? These are areas where new value is being created because you're introducing new tech. So these are it. I would also like to just brush upon another thing, is that Pakistan is one of the largest exporters of talent in the world, right? So we say labors like unskilled labor, but also actual talented doctors or engineers, right? Another thing, and most of our, a big chunk of our economic GDP comes from remittances, right? Keeping the economy up. So another area where we can focus is making this talent tech ready. So for instance, your medical technicians or medical nurses or medical, radiologists that you're sending abroad, make them AI ready, make them, educate them on how to read, on how to use, for instance, AI radiology software, stuff like that, right? Similarly, for our construction workers, that Pakistan exports a lot of construction workers to the Gulf and to EU and stuff, make them AI ready, right? We're not saying that convert all your construction workers into coders. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to make sure that they know how to use these models, or in their jobs, in their daily jobs, and well, that they have that machine readiness.
You spoke about different AI models as well, and typically when we speak about AI, it's LLM or large language learning models, right? But there's also, of course, given where we're placed and the resource constraints and what do we invest in and how sustainable it is. These are the conversations around AI globally as well. What do you think? Is this the model to stick to? Are there other types that we could probably look in as an industry?
Absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg, right? So, for instance, in terms of content generation, Pakistan generates a lot of content, right? I mean, just as a comical segue, we've seen what happened with the Pakistan-India conflict with the memes, right? There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of content that we generate, right? And the future is all about AI content generation. This content will be used anywhere from your Hollywood movies to social media to your gaming, to your games, right? And Pakistan already is producing, like, we don't speak enough about it, but Pakistan has some very, very good game development studios and high graphics studios. So content generation is one field that I did not mention previously, but that's something that can bring in significant revenue to the country.
And is there a shared vision? Because you spoke about interoperability and also data pipelines, and there has to be a connect between the public sector and the private sector. But how do you currently see the industry or government, and we'll get to the policy in a bit as well, but just in terms of cross-sectoral conversation or a shared vision for an AI-ready future?
That's the sad part. But the thing is that Pakistan has always operated this way. This is not new. When fintechs were coming into the market, right, there was very little conversation till the sandboxing started happening, and that started happening after a while, right? It will come. It's fine. But right now we're existing in silos. Like I said, Arbisoft is a client-focused company that is doing phenomenal work in AI in Pakistan and in exporting AI tech out of Pakistan. Similarly, you've got Temples, you've got others who are doing the same thing, right? But they're existing in their own silos, right? And then there you have the government. So there's very little conversation that's happening. One thing that I think we can benefit heavily from is we already have an institution, NADRA. NADRA is one of the best data collection institutions in the region, if not only Pakistan, right? And if NADRA, can open up, anonymize information and open up their data sets for training of these models or building upon, these rails, that would be fantastic. So it's like we do have the basic, we're not a country like Nepal, for instance, who doesn't have their homework done. We do. And there's a lot of homework we've done. It's just that we have to talk to each other. The government has to talk to the private sector. The private sector has to talk to the government.
So regulation always tends to be this very contentious subject, right? Whether it's private sector, society, government, everybody approaches it from their own angle. Now there is an AI policy. What are your thoughts, one, on policy, and get to sort of the nitty-gritties of the regulatory debate as well?
Yeah, I know. So Pakistan's AI policy has been getting a lot of flags, a lot of hate. And I honestly think that it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest. The fact that we do not have any actionable items, it's more an aspirational policy more than anything. The vagueness actually makes it a blessing in disguise. That's what I think. And I'll tell you why. Because, in Pakistan, we've seen it previously. In Pakistan, regulation doesn't always mean relief or reform. Sometimes it means ruin, right? So for innovation to breed, for startups to actually keep iterating, keep figuring out what works, does not work, in an environment in a country like Pakistan that is already quite difficult to operate in, right? Having like an ironclad framework would not help, right? So I think it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest, because our startups will keep doing whatever they can. We'll follow the fintech model where sandboxing has worked, right? Come up with solutions, test them, and then go. Once you have something to regulate it, then regulate it. So this is something that we've seen with the Silicon Valley, and I wouldn't want obviously to compare Pakistan to the US. Like, there's no comparison. But when the Valley started, this is exactly like it wasn't. They didn't build on regulation. They innovated on the lack of it, right? So I'm of that opinion. I think the policy, yes, it can be. It's very aspirational. You know, I'll be surprised. Like 1 million. I think we're claiming that we would probably have 1 million AI ready resources by the end of 2030, 50,000 or something civic centers, by the end of 2030 on AI, which I think is a very, very lofty goal, very unlikely to happen. That said, it's a goal, right? And we've seen what happens with goals in Pakistan. Pakistan is not very. The best thing that we do is we announce things and then we go AWOL on them. And I'm hoping the government would, go AWOL on it for a while. But having said that, it does not mean, vagueness does not mean void. We have to have it. Like at some point, we have to have it, but let the ecosystem breathe. Right now, what the government can do best are three things. Number one, interoperability, like I said, providing clean data sets to for the private sector to build things on and to iterate, right? The second thing that the government can do and the industry will benefit heavily from is to come up, in terms of repatriation of profits, right, for investors. This is, if you look at Pakistan's ecosystem, most of the investment that's coming into this country, startups, has been at a seed level, right? And these are investors, but these are investors whose money is now stuck in the country and it's very difficult for them to take out, and which is keeping so many more investors away, right? So if you provide easier repatriation of profits, that would be second thing for investors. And then the third thing that I would emphasize on is your data protection laws, right? No company, no AI company is going to come to Pakistan and do a TOT, a transfer of technology, if they're not sure that the data is going to be protected, right? So if only we do these three things, right, focus on these things rather than creating councils and making ministries on AI and stuff, I think Pakistan is going to benefit hugely from it.
And I think that's a common strand, right? Where, of course, there is a concern that with data set come concerns of data protection and privacy, and also how that gets used. And it's going to be, especially if we're looking at data in the healthcare sector, for instance, right? So again, like you mentioned, I think that it requires emphasis, like how do you anonymize data that it can be used in a way it's useful, but again, there are certain guardrails in place. And I also want to come back to what you said that, it's a bit of a lofty idea and hopefully they don't achieve it. But this is sort of that brick and mortar approach, right? Let's set up buildings and parks and this, that, and the other, and lots and lots, scale it. But do we need to, and can we afford to scale rather than maybe looking at what might, because it is resource intensive as well, right? AI is, as in terms of environmental impact, energy efficiency, those are concerns that are globally present. And can we afford that?
Like you said, AI is a very cost-intensive technology, right? Pakistan cannot afford this. Right now, if you compare it to India's policy, right? India's throwing money at it. India's made it industry first, right? I think if I'm not wrong, it's about $2.6 billion or something like that they've committed to it, right? We don't have that sort of money to run the country, let alone invest in like AI for the next 5 years, right? So no, we don't have the capital. But what Pakistanis have is grit, and like I said, our ecosystem has thrived and done so well despite of all these challenges, right? So that is, and I'm very hopeful as long as the government picks and chooses where to interfere and where to stay out of, and has the foresight and the resolve to see it all the way. I'm pretty hopeful that Pakistan's AI future is quite bright. We are not going to be, our moonshot is not going to, we're not going to create the next ChatGPT, right? Let's be very realistic. We're not even going to, we're not going to become the next Meta, right? What we need to do and focus on is use AI to solve our own local problems of 240 to 250 million people right now. Number one, that, and make products that are exportable, scalable, and they bring in foreign revenue. These are the only things that we need to focus on. We do not need to, I mentioned India, but it's also because, they're right next to us and they are now a tech giant. So it's a market that we should aspire to be. But we are not in competition with India. We're not in competition with the EU. We're not in competition with the US. US can afford to decentralize and put innovation first because they have the courts and the legal system to protect users, right? We have none of that. That's why I said, like, the best thing that the government can do is just pick and choose what to interfere in and what to stay away from.
Speaking of the EU as well, right, and in terms of the regulatory debate, litigation, especially globally, the standoff between the US model, which is decentralization or hands-off approach, right, let the companies do what they want to, versus then the EU, where there is a lot of legislation, policy, owners and companies, and then there's a sense, how do you strike that balance, right, between not stifling innovation, but also having the right kind of regulatory framework in place for the protections that you speak of. So what, in your view, would be that in terms of, I mean, not just for the AI piece specifically, but you've spoken about, there's remittances, but there's also the ability to take money out, right, or the profits out. So holistically, what is it that you feel needs to be done to really give the tech sector that base where they can build on?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, ethics is one part of it, right? Obviously, once our companies start building solutions for the local market, they need to understand that this is a framework that they can operate in terms of, I'm talking about the ethics and governance framework, right? And they cannot. Right now, I think it's just too early, right? What we do need is anonymization of data, for sure, right? There's a lot of misinformation that's happening, like a lot of AI generated content that's creating misinformation. And I believe, like, you Farieha, and your organization has done a phenomenal job in fighting that, right? So you can probably speak more about it. For the tech community, for the tech industry, what is it that we need right now? Clean data pipelines, we need interoperability. I keep saying it. I feel like I'm like a broken record by saying it, but really, truly, your AI revolution cannot come to Pakistan until and unless you do that, right? The third thing we need easier, investment readiness. We keep saying, like, Pakistan is investment ready. It's not, and in fact, it's not, right? We need to create favorable policies for repatriation of funds, right? Data protection is another thing. And then another thing which I feel like the tech community, the industry is going to get like a great boost from is easier tax reforms for investors. So right now, there are a lot of, like, we're a very tech friendly country, to be honest, in terms of taxation and stuff. It's not that bad. We're not that heavily taxed. And there's also tax exemptions that tech companies or the industry enjoys, right? But in terms of bringing investment into the country for investors, there is none, right? We have special technology zones that are tax exempt and all, but they operate, they're operating in their own silos. There's not much activity happening there, right? So we need to let an American or a Australian or a French investor, or even like an investor from Gulf know, right, that if you invest in Pakistan, if you're bringing your buck to Pakistan, these are the advantages that you're getting, including tax rebates, right? So these are solid steps that the government can take rather than building councils, like I said, and building ministries and doing photo ops.
Also, of course, US is a whole different market. Like you said, we can't compare ourselves to Silicon Valley, and even India is a tech giant in the region. But are there markets that we could other markets we could look at, or other products in this AI space we could look towards, and whether aspire towards, but then come up with our own in terms of recognizing, because I keep bringing up local needs because that is also something that you really underscore, right? That we have specific indigenous needs, markets, solutions that need to be developed, and that's something that really stood out in your post as well, right? So it seems like there needs to be a shift in thinking. What would be that shift in thinking, approach to AI solutions, maybe to look at other markets and products, but then come up with our own?
So that's a great question. And I think the world, is now moving away. Pakistan has also realized that our inspiration should not come from Silicon Valley. Like, we can build dreams on Silicon Valley, but that's not happening anytime soon, right? Markets that we should be looking towards are countries like Nigeria, countries like Egypt, where innovation is quietly happening, but the government is not standing in their way, right? Markets like even China, even though China is head over shoulders above us, but they are just now opening into the world. Like, we've been interacting with the world for about 70 years, right? So we've had a jump start there. So the emerging markets, I think there's much to learn from the emerging world. Your Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Turkey is another example. There's a lot of work happening in AI in the Turkish ecosystem, right? So I would say these are things that we can, and the industries that are predominantly these geographies are working on are fintech, right? Which Pakistan definitely, we're doing pretty well in fintech, but we could always do much better. And AI is here to revolutionize that entire industry. Health tech, right? Pakistan is in huge need of healthcare solutions that are for the masses, right? That is, again, something that AI can help, right? From diagnostics to triaging. And then the third thing is education tech, right? So these are three areas that emerging markets are very heavily focusing on when they are implementing AI technologies, and these are industries these are areas that we can learn from.
Tanya, any final words, concluding remarks that you would want to, whether the startup community, I know they've spoken plenty about what the government should or should not do to create an enabling environment, but specifically what the tech industry should also maybe do and then.
I think we have to keep one thing in mind, that AI truly is a transformative technology. Okay? It's not like the Industrial Revolution, it is bigger than that, right? And this is a technology that can easily push us out of the digital race, right? And it'll also become a tool for modern colonization, right? So if we are not training models on Urdu, if we are not training models on our own data sets, right, we will become digitally voiceless in the global community, right? And so it's up to Pakistan, whether Pakistan wants to become another colony of the West, or they want to become an active contributor towards this technology. And we have the means to do so. It's not that we don't have to. It's just a question of policy and a question of foresight. So I'm like, think about this very, very carefully. Pakistan, like I said, cannot afford another round of economic cosplay. And with this technology, like I said, as transformative as it is, it will be very easy for it to leave Pakistan or a Pakistani behind in the next 2 to 5 years. So we need to make that choice very, very carefully.
And I think what we've seen globally, the way that, again, like we don't have to be America, we don't have to be these large companies, etc. And there are a lot of ethical questions also about what these platforms or companies have evolved into, and not just about one particular platform, but generally what we're talking about big tech. How do you serve your local community, your local population, with issues that are very specific to us, and also as a resource-stricken, capital-stricken country? What is it that we can do? Because it's not as if we don't have certain things, and skills set is something that you also underscore needs to be developed, and that's also skilled labor is something that will put us at par, because we can't aspire to be a market unless we invest in that skill development. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us and making time on DawnNews English. This is all that we have today. And I think the one takeaway certainly is that we have to think local, and to be able to have that competitive edge, we will have to come up with something that serves local clients. Thank you.